Well, howdy. Welcome back to the 99, where we talk about Commander and other MTG related things. That's not true at all. It's predominantly Commander for now, but yeah, isn't this just the best format? Can we get a poll going? Is Commander the best format? No, welcome to the show before the show. I'm your host, Pat, just here to check, to make sure everything's working, make sure everyone's happy with the setup. New setup. Slightly. New microphone. I liked it so much the first time, I want to test it one more time with you, my fine guinea pigs. Thank you for being here for this. But we are using a Takstar, which I could highly recommend. And it's just a on-camera microphone that's doing a splendid job. And unless your camera has really good preamps, I would suggest turning them to decibels in body and letting this guy do all the work, because the pickup pattern on this is so strong. I've had to turn this down quite a bit, but I am really excited for today's stream, in particular because I really like the legendary we're discussing today. It's a real fantastic abled body Rakdos gentleman. The Voldaren Scion, have you heard of him? Florian. Brilliant. And what's also great is that it has a track record on this program, as I've played it live, and it kicked ass. So, and don't just take my opinion, watch the video. But I'm going to tune in with you guys, see how you're all doing. And obviously, I'm going to talk about some of the pros and cons of today's video. But I'll talk about that in just a second. Hello, how are you today? Ruben Smith. I am spectacular. Cheers to you. This is to curb any sort of hangover from last night. Muddled lime with tequila. Cheers to you, Ruben. Rogue, how did I get here? I was watching a Joshua Weissman video. Are you trying to say this guy looks like me? I don't know how you got here, but thanks for being here. I hope you like MTG/Commander, because that's predominantly what this is going to be about. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy this. Anthony, hey Pat. Hey Anthony, how are you? I'm really good. I don't know if I actually answered that question. How am I today? I'm great. I had such an action-packed week, but like yesterday, I don't know, it's the weekend. I wanted to like enjoy my weekend. So what wound up happening is that we went out to Coney Island, Allison and I, to skateboard on the boardwalk over there, but also just in the surrounding neighborhoods and just get more comfortable skating. We only picked up skating last month, actually. And I'm feeling fairly confident. There's actually like a little skate park there with ramps and such, which I was watching like a 12-year-old just crush it. I'm like, man, I can't do this in front of this kid's parents and like fall on my ass and make a total fool out of myself just yet. I wish I had the confidence to just do that though. Because I'm a badass, I don't wear pads or anything, and I really should, particularly if I'm gonna throw myself on skate ramps and such. And I've never skated a bowl or anything like that. But it was such a fun time. We had a blast. We were in Coney Island the whole day, and then traffic the latter half back from where we live. But then we wound up going to dinner with Allie's parents, well, dad, mom-in-law, and unbeknownst to us, we wound up seeing a Broadway show. Broadway's back in session, folks. If you live in the New York City area, yes, you need to wear a mask the whole time, and there are guidelines. There are mandates in place here in New York to see shows, to go out anywhere. But, we've had fewer COVID cases, so that's good. But not to dwell on that, we went out to see Chicago. It was a blast. I was up. It was a long night, but it was super, super fun. If you're on the Discord, I shared part of my dinner from Gallagher's Steakhouse, which is in that neighborhood. And it's so good. If you just want to splurge on steaks, there's a lot of great steakhouses in the New York City area, but that's one of them, because they have a really extensive wine collection. So if you enjoy good wines from all different regions, of different vintages, so good. So I'm great. I'm really great. Tiger, audio seems great, and everything seems to be synced up well. Tiger, so that's the interesting thing, and that's why I wanted to do this, because normally, you can't see it, I have a Zoom F6 over there, which is a really amazing field recorder, right? And it's generally what I use for audio in studio. But I've noticed that there have been sync issues with it, and I've tried to rectify that. But because this top camera microphone is attached to the camera unit, it's going to be synced because it's not recording, but it's playing back this footage and this audio at the same time. So it should be perfectly in sync. And if it's not, then we'll rectify that. But the audio quality is stupendous. Again, it's like I couldn't recommend this more. It's like a $30 microphone. I purchased it off Amazon. I have rechargeable Loops that I'll switch, but it came with a battery. It came with everything you need. The little wind muff is okay. It would be nice to have what folks call a dead cat. Don't tell my cats that. But like a wind sock, a furry wind sock, that would be amazing. They don't make one for this. It's very small, but it sounds really good. I'm actually really satisfied with it. So I'm glad it sounds good. Hey, Sarah. Good afternoon, Pat. Good afternoon to you, Sarah. Is it the afternoon? Yeah, it definitely is. Thomas Lee, looking forward to the deck. What's funny? I really love playing Rakdos. It's one of my favorite. I play a lot of. It's weird. Like, I've evolved over time. If you start watching this channel at its inception, you'll notice that I really gravitated towards monocolored commanders, and as of late, I'm gravitating towards dual colors. I don't know why that is, but Rakdos has sort of been my main squeeze since recently, namely Florian, and he is really fun. He is more fun than Rograk and Tavesh. Let me just say that, and with a handful of good reasons why. A majority of the list is very similar to one another, as it is with many Rakdos decks. Like, they only have so many ways you can accomplish a win, but the playstyle of this list is so fun, and I don't know, it's just one of those commanders that's off the beaten path so far as what you want to do, and I really like it. So I can't wait to share it. Jay Dobbin says, a little hair of the dog that bit you? Yeah, I mean, damn, a lot of dogs bit me last night. It was a fun time. And, yeah, that's essentially what's going on. I actually was perfectly fine. Like, when you drink good wine, and when you drink good liquor, you don't get hungover unless you go way overboard. I find that if you're having cheap wine, it's usually, or like too much flavored soju, something like that, something that has like a high sugar content, that's when I get like really bad headaches and I feel like a mess. But just straight tequila and or Gibson's, gin Gibson's, good time with wine. I was at a Manhattan somewhere in the middle there, but I was joking because he's cooking YouTuber. Oh, what are we brewing? I'll have to check him out. Joshua Weissman. I feel like this name's familiar, but I'm an MTG fanatic and a short-time lurker. Well, Rogue, thank you for being here. Amarok, hope I pronounced that correctly. Hey, Pat, your thoughts on the new zombie commander from Midnight Hunt in Estrad? I think he's really cool. We haven't built one yet. I would actually like to build... the name is eluding me. We discussed it when it came out. I know which one you're talking about, the Dimir one. I like it a lot. It's just good value. And I think it's certainly competent. Dimir's like a good part of the color pie. So I'm sure it's probably really fantastic. Don't mind me, guys. I am just making sure I don't melt. But we'll do this. Oh, yes. Oh, perfect. Okay. There's a couple of zombie commanders, isn't there? I think there's the one, and then Acerak, I guess, if you want to play Acerak or however you want to pronounce that. Sarah, I've been brewing for Florian, and when I saw that you were going to do a live deck tech, I knew I had to attend to see. Good afternoon from Florida, Alex. Hey, excited to see the spice. And yeah, Sarah, it's going to be... I guess this is a natural leap into the bulk of the video, really. So, twofold. My reasons for doing this live deck tech are twofold. So this isn't a cold brew, this isn't a brewmaster. I have a very definite strategy, and I've very definitely kicked some butt with this deck. I enjoy it a lot. And again, like I was saying earlier, you can actually see me play this deck on the channel. If you watch our previous Brew Wars live, pardon the audio issues, there was some weird feedback, and I will hope to correct that in the future. I'm sure it's very easily fixed, but I could not tell when I was monitoring it that was happening for you guys. So lower the volume and then just enjoy the play-by-play with the dialogue with Casually Competitive. Very, very fun games with Justin and I, as well as two of their crew. It was such a blast, and you'll get to see me play Florian then. This is very much the same list, and I would say that there can be some changes involved, and that's what's going to be fun about this live stream deck tech. So again, This is a decided upon deck. Now, the main reason I'm doing this live is because I did not have time. This week was insane. The busiest week I've ever had, and I don't like going to bed at 3 a.m. So what ultimately wound up happening is that this got delayed to the point where I just didn't have a good amount of time to do this proper, right? But then I was thinking about all the, not necessarily complaints, but ways we can improve upon this particular deck tech segment. With all of the past deck techs, channel's been known for its deck techs. The first video was a deck tech. And a lot of the issues I found were like, well, you know, I would really love to see like starting hand discussions and or potential changes, or, you know, I've always been open to dialogue concerning legendaries or, you know, commander pairings and what might be particularly a good way to build them and or change them, right? So what's nice about this is that you can sort of give me your 2 cents on this list if you have been brewing for it, and ask me questions about the list so that we can sort of course correct it. But as it stands, this is a finalized deck in my mind, and it works very well. Although it definitely can be improved upon. I don't want to say that any of my lists are the best out there, and that's why I label them a better version of the deck. So if you actually want to follow along with the Florian deck tech, you can join me by going to the link in the description and clicking a better Florian Voldaren Scion, and you'll be looking at the same list we'll be looking at today. And if you happen to catch this you know, after it's gone live, just give it a good 24 hours and you should be able to see the chat that was generating questions during, but I'll try to do a good job of just reading your name, obviously posing the questions to our YouTube members. You obviously have priority. If you send a super chat, priority. If you send a super chat, I'll try to stop what I'm doing to address you immediately. But yeah, so I think this solves a bunch of problems that we've had with past deck techs, to where I can sort of tell you why I've excluded cards. I can tell you on the fly what a good starting hand is, because we can actually go through starting hands if that's something we want to do. And if you want to see it just play tested, we can play test it together. So all of this is a great way to sort of correct upon the traditional formula and still provide you the same amount of content. But I think it's probably time to jump into this. I hope that sort of gives you an idea of how this deck tech's going to go. And I've got a whole outline over here that I'll read for you. But let's start this up proper. Let's start this up like a regular, good old Sunday episode. Welcome back to the 99, where we're focused on brewing a better competitive commander. I'm your host, Patrick Marlette, and this is the Florian Voldaren Scion deck tech. That's right, the Rakdos hubby, the sexiest man in Rakdos. Does he have a nickname? Let's come up with one during the stream today. But easily the coolest vampire commander I've seen ever. I mean, I think that you can sort of state that Eminence Boy is also a fun one, but so far as like base abilities are concerned, base stats, like Florian's got a lot going for him that I'm very excited to talk about. And of course, we're going to go through my whole schedule today as to how we're going to cover Florian, but I'm extremely stoked to talk about Flo. But first and foremost, as with every single weekend stream and or episode, there is a monthly topic to discuss, and I actually like to throw the question off to you guys, but I'm pulling it up now. And for the month of October, if there's one thing you could change about the Commander format, what would it be? And we got a string of responses to this over on the Patreon, and I selected because there's 5 Sundays in the month of October this year, and maybe every year, I don't know. I'm not a calendar junkie, but if you know, let me know. And I just took a bunch of them and then a bunch of smaller replies that I'm going to provide you now from our Patreon community, because like a lot of these were really cool. And I actually got 3 here, 4 here. I'll go through all of them. But yeah, so far as the mini replies to the monthly topic of October are concerned, SifC1 says, the starting player should not draw a card. Partner commanders should share commander tax. Starting player not drawing a card, that's interesting. And actually, what's really cool is someone actually riffed on this prior and had their own idea as to how the game should transpire, that first turn, right? But starting player not drawing a card is an interesting suggestion, actually one I saw come up a lot. But Josh Chu72 says, I would like to see this type of change. If you're going first, skip your draw. Might help balance that win ratio a bit. Maybe. It also means you just can't be as greedy, right? Which is what happens with a lot of decks these days. People are greedier and greedier with their commander list because they know that they're going to get a draw. So if they have to go down to 6, it's almost like they had a starting hand of 7 anyways. And provided what you mulligan for is adequate, you know, the draw is just icing on the cake. So maybe it would curb some of those first turn wins. Although, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing in the world of cEDH. And if you're wondering, this is a cEDH channel, so people have the intent of winning, and if someone wins on turn 1, then that just means we get more games in on that day. So I don't necessarily mind, but that is interesting input there. Trey Payne says, I really wish they would bring back Banned as commander. But if Banned list is off the table, then, and I'd stipulated, everyone, I feel like everyone has their own opinions on the ban list. So I was like, well, you know, you can give opinions on the ban list. So that's where Trey is coming from here. But if the ban list is off the table, then I would say definitely allow split cards where half is off color. I want Reese in my last roll deck. I can see that. And if you guys don't know or understand split colored spells, like Guttural Response, that's in Gruul. It's in Gruul because it's a split symbol of red and green. Basically, Trey's saying, no more of that. And I know that's been a conversation for a while, and I know they've given an official opinion on that, the rules committee that governs Commander's rules. But yeah, that's actually an interesting one. And Adam Smithen says, make Nephilim, Uncle Istvan, and Ali of Cairo, Sinbad, and Tomanoa, I might have misspelled that, legendary. You cowards. I agree. I agree. Uncle Istvan is not a legendary. What's up with that? I mean, I guess there can be multiple Uncle Istvans, but only one in the world of MTG. It's kind of funny. There are a bunch of named people in the world that aren't legendary, and I don't know who you can really direct that to, other than the rules committee, like just basically saying, yeah, those are legendaries and you can use them in your decks, despite the fact that WotC has never stated them as legendary. But yeah, that's the monthly topic for this month. It's a fun one. I think it pertains to a lot of us because we have varying opinions on how this game should be run or how it could be improved upon. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. But so far as the roadmap for today's deck tech is concerned, just to give you guys an idea, we're covering Florian, obviously, which we'll discuss right off the bat. And after that, we'll discuss core cards. So just like any other deck tech, I like to provide you guys with what I find to be the most important effects to the commander and or to the deck. And in this instance, all the core cards will pertain to Florian, and we'll get to those when we get to those. But also we'll discuss win cons, and alongside that, play lines. These things aren't, these two don't always go hand in hand, but it's important to understand how you get to the ultimate conclusion, the win con, via different play lines. And with Florian, it's really straightforward. Again, if you just watch the gameplay, you'll see me demonstrate it time and time again. I did really well in this live stream. I'm really proud of myself. But also I want to go over starting hands, and if you want, we can play around. Now, I'm going to set up time for the end of the video for a dedicated Q&A. It could be like a 10-minute segment. And with all of these little segments I've just discussed, hang tight for time signatures to pop up after the video. So if you just want to jump to a particular segment, it's there for you. This will be the easiest way to just cover, like, okay, well, I want to build this list. I trust Pat's build. What does he recommend as a starting hand? And you can just jump to that, right? So a little bit easier for everyone. But let me see if you guys had any responses to the monthly topic. I'd love to know. What are your thoughts on Sick Fingers? I can't give you that yet. Am I late? No, Cameron, you're perfectly on time. Florian got the suck. Will held Rod Cleaver, thank you. But yeah, let's jump into this one. I'm really stoked for this, and to start, I should probably get you on the same page I'm on. Again, I have Scryfall up to the side, just in case we want to look at potential additions or discuss cards that you would recommend for your own Florian build, and then I can give you my feedback as to why it's not in the list. Maybe I just missed it, and we're perfecting this or making it better as we go along, right? But Florian Voldaren Scion is one generic Rakdos, so 3 mana value total. Legendary creature, Vampire Noble. Oh, look at that. So noble. 3/3 body, first strike. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the total amount of life your opponent's lost this turn. Exile one of those cards and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may play the exiled cards this turn. So, Yes, we read that correctly. It's just life loss. Any mass damage spell, any mass life loss spell, anything that's going to punish your opponents, and even if it's just them like cracking a fetch land in response to a play on your main phase 1, track that life total loss. And they grab their shock land, track that. Oh, they tap their Ancient Tomb, track that. Anytime, track that. Hashtag track that, Florian. That's what you're supposed to be doing, because you care about all those instances, and we're going to be trying to generate a handful of those instances ourselves. But that's what makes Florian so good. You get a really big scry, basically, every single turn, provided you're setting up for it. And what's interesting about this is that the main strategy for this deck is actually, it's not too dissimilar from Belby. So if you follow my Belby deck and you enjoy my Belby deck, what's great is that a lot of the cards that slot into that list, if you use the same sleeves, they'll slot right into this one, because they function perfectly here too. And I'm talking predominantly of pingers, which actually leads us into our core cards, which is great news. But we're all on the same page here with Florian. You're basically trying to do a lot of damage, spread the love. Obviously, Florian does 3 damage himself and is a first striker. So in most all instances, I found that people aren't willing to risk their Tymna or whatever value creature, because you're always going to get away scot-free with first strike. You're always going to kill the thing. So it's almost like having unblockable. Almost. Obviously, there are caveats. Like, people will block this if they have to block this, but no one really cares, because it's a roll of the dice. Like, you're gambling at what's at the top of your deck. Unless you're doing a lot of damage, and we'll get into that in a second. I believe I demonstrated like a dig of 14, 15, and that's kind of small change to what you can do with this list. I've seen people throw in Pox, throw in Heartless Hitagetsu, and we can talk about those. Those are excluded from my own build, but you can dig really deep. And I don't largely find that necessary. I find a dig of like 6 to 10 decent, and then play out value. So there's a lot of free spells in here, there's a lot of free artifacts, obviously. And mind you, I did say play, because you can just exile a land and let that be your land drop for the turn. So you're never behind on a land, you're never behind on an interaction, you're never behind on a combo card. And for a majority of the time when I'm digging with Florian, if I see Underworld Breach and a clear line of play, I'll grab Underworld Breach. If I have Underworld Breach in my hand and I see a tutor, I'll use the tutor to grab a red Elemental Blast. If I see Deflecting Swat, I'll just pocket the Deflecting Swat and have that as an option for when I'm trying to combo out. And of course, those play lines, those combos, we'll all discuss after the fact. So the first thing I want to do is just cover those core cards, and I think it's probably best, and what's nice is that we can sort of just have everything in front of us here. But the core cards, and I've got them in order here, there's 14. There's a lot. There's a lot. But I'm going to rope all of these into one category. So this is where things get similar to Belby, right? We have all these pingers. So I'll throw them off to the side here. But for one example, Mardu Shadowspear. 1 black, creature, human, warrior, 1/1 body. When it attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. Cool. Oh, Night Market Lookout? Whenever she's tapped, so you can do anything to tap her. Is there a Springleaf Drum in the deck? No. But if she happens to be tapped, you will do 1 damage to each opponent, gain some life. Same story, Pulse Tracker, same story, Thornbow Archer, same story, Vicious Conquistador. Now, the only difference between Belby and Florian is that we have access to Spear Spewer, which is a really excellent pinger. So 1 red, creature, Goblin Warrior, 0/2 body, defender. You can tap this and do 1 damage to each player. This doesn't include you. That's okay. It's another pinger in that 1 CMC slot. That's perfect for our curve, right? So our turn 1 looks like maybe some fast mana into a Spear Spewer and hold for some form of interaction, right? Turn 2, we drop Florian, right? With the Chrome Mox or whatever else we put down. Any excess mana we have, it just goes into casting whatever we grab, right? And the only unfortunate bit with Florian, I guess I should state this now, is that it's not a may. You look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the total amount of life your opponent's lost this turn. You can't decline to do this. So one recommendation I'll make is just, even if you do have the land for turn, play Florian first, and then if you can't cast anything from the pile that's exiled, just grab a land. Exile the land. Oh, and then you may play the exiled card this turn. right? So this way, you're not just exiling things without value, which is definitely something I did on the live stream. Ignore the fact that I exiled a Fire Covenant and didn't cast it when when the board needed it. All part of the plan, though. All part of the plan. But it functions really well for helping you get land drops as well, as I mentioned. So again, you're going to use these pingers in tandem with Florian to dig 3 deep. Oh, and if Florian's able to attack, you'll dig 6 deep, right? Because you're doing 3 damage. This is really brilliant news. So that covers all of our just standard pingers here. And then we get into some of the other ones here. Not necessarily a pinger, but Kroxa, Titan of Death. Maybe you've heard of this Elder Giant. It's a 6/6 body. It's just Rakdos. It's just Rakdos. Whenever Kroxa enters the battlefield, you sacrifice if it didn't escape. But when it enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card. Then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. So if you're doing the math, if they didn't discard a non-land card, that is 3, 6, 9. Oh, I'm digging 9 deep. Did Florian attack? I'm digging 12 deep. I'm going really deep into my deck. This is a one-time effect, but it also has escape. Like anytime we use some of these instant spells, sorcery spells that we just have in the deck that we're going to be rolling through our turns with, that gets us closer to using escape on Kroxa. And obviously we're in red. We have a little card called Underworld Breach, so we can do this for an easier cost, both on the exile end and the mana end. It's just really good recurring value. It is a one-time effect, I will say. It's probably one of the weaker pingers, but saying that Kroxa is a weak pinger is bodes well for every other pinger in the deck. All right, I think that's fair to say. And don't worry, after I get through the core cards, I'll defer to the comments. I am trying to keep an eye out my periphery to see if there's any YouTube members adding me and or super chats. But I'll interrupt things to get to you guys. But I will leave a space before we move on to the next segment to respond to any comments. So moving on here, we have probably a card I wouldn't say is great in every cEDH list, but this one's really good here. Again, if you play at a more casual table, you don't need to rope in the same combos I'm using here. I'm sure that these would be considered degenerate at some tables, but at a cEDH table, this is all fair game. And do note, again, this channel is predominantly for competitive players. But if this gets your juices flowing, even better. Court of Ambition. For 2 generic, double black enchantment, when Court of Ambition enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Great news, you get to draw a card at the end of your turn. Even better news is the fact that at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. For the most part, people just lose the 3 life. Even if it means letting you dig 3, 6, 9, oh, those Kroxa numbers again. They're gonna do that. No one wants to, usually what is considered the best commander, one of the best effects in commander is draw. So the opposite effect is equally as bad, right? Having to discard down, it puts you at a disadvantage. So you will never want to be the opponent, like putting yourself at a disadvantage, unless you have some sort of reanimate strategy and this plays in well into your plan, whatever, then you do get to get away with it. But for the most part, they're losing life. And in the what's more department, if you're monarch instead, each opponent loses 6 life. So unless they discard 2 cards, I should state, they're really just going to lose the 6 life. And you're going to dig 6, 12, 18, Florian, 21. That's a lot of cards. But again, the big thing here is the fact that you're just getting to draw cards. So you're sort of raising your hand size, coupled with the fact that you're exiling cards every turn if you have Florian out. So you've got a lot of card advantage going for you with this, coupled with the fact that it's just more damage. This works on both axes so far as like Florian's trying to operate on, so far as keeping a healthy hand like any commander, but also digging deep. This is great for it. Now, the next card we want to talk about, these are all sorceries. Unfortunately, there's no instant speed spells that sort of operate in this manner, but we have a little card called Rolling Earthquake. Rolling Earthquake, is there right over here, right over here. You see that? Don't worry, I'll read it for you. X red. Sorcery speed. Rolling Earthquake deals X damage to each creature without horsemanship in each player. What's horsemanship, Pat? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. There was a set that had horsemen. That's all you need to know. And then no one plays them. Xiao Dun, no one plays these horsemen, and maybe you do, maybe you have a horseman tribal, and I'm sorry if you do. However, you're safe against Rolling Earthquake, but more importantly, each player takes damage, right? So at most, you're normally going to cap this at 3. And I mean, X equals 2, 1 red. And there are other pay X spells like this. We just need the 1, and I would say that Rolling Earthquake is the better one. But X equals 2 is fine because Florian is a 3/3, still lives, and we're getting rid of anything with a but that's 2. In a cEDH setting, that's the majority of all creatures. Or if it's really just one player, that still opens the path for you to swing Florian that way, right? So it's 2, 4, 6, 9. Oh, I'm digging 9 this turn just because I wiped the board. Yes, you want that. You want that. Next card is going to be Vicious Rumors. This is really great. It plays well into Dothy Voidwalker, one of our creatures. All the discard effects play well into Dothy Voidwalker. Really a linchpin in a lot of mass discard builds, but really good here, just for value. Just really good value. But this is nice because for 1 black, Vicious Rumors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Same thing as a pinger. And each opponent discards a card, then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. And you gain 1 life, because why not? It's good. This is one of the only decks I really like Vicious Rumors in because this reads to me as 1 black. It's not Scry, but I'm going to just say Scry 3 by itself, which is really, really potent. We want these mass damaging effects to be as low mana value as possible to provide us the mana to do more with our turn, right? Because we won't always get the perfect hand where we have like 5 mana by turn 2. It's like, it's just not every game that happens. So the lower the cost of these effects, the better. So next up here, we have Strong Arm Tactics, and this is one of my favorite cards. Brilliant art, it's just a good effect, but Strong Arm Tactics for 1 generic, 1 black, sorcery. Each player, I should state, discards a card from his or her hand. Then each player who didn't discard a creature card this way loses 4 life. What's the most unpopular type in cEDH? It's changing. It's changing. The meta I've found is becoming more mid-range and actually more creature-centric. So they might be able to skirt around this. But anyone who didn't discard a creature this way loses 4 life. 4 life! That's insane. That's 4, 8, 12. It's fun to do the math because Florian really cares about it here. But that's 4, 8, 12, 15 of Florian attacks. That's a lot of dig. That's amazing. And it's the same story with Tyrant's Choice. So with Tyrant's Choice, for 1 generic, 1 black, Will of the Council, sorcery speed, starting with you, each player votes for death or torture. You will say torture. You will always say torture. And as long as 1 person is on the boat with you, if death gets more votes, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Okay. If torture gets more votes, or the vote is tied, each player loses 4 life. You'll actually see me demonstrate this card in our Brew Wars Live. It's good. It's really good. Because what are the options here? I lose my commander in most cases, or I lose my I lose my value creature, the mindset of the opponent, or I take 4 damage. Well, thankfully, you know, they set our life totals to 40 in commander, so I guess I'm okay with 4 damage. And in most cases, they're going to be okay with it because they don't want to lose whatever they built their turns towards playing. So you're going to do a lot of damage. Now, if no one has a creature on board, then no one's going to jump on the boat with you, and they'll likely sacrifice nothing. It can be bad. But in many instances, this plays exactly as you'd anticipate. It's good. It's really good. Torment of Hailfire, kind of similar. This is more of a payoff, or what you'd consider an outlet near the end game. But it also does a very similar thing to all the rest of these. So for X, double black, repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices an on-land permanent or discards a card. Both things you don't want to do. Again, what's the opposite of draw? Discard? I don't want to do that. They're probably going to take the 3 life. Sacrifice an on-land permanent? No. I'll probably take the 3 life. If it's like between 3 life and a Ristic Study, they'll take the 3 life and be okay with that. However, late game, you can just amass a lot of mana, and I'll tell you how, and just pound them with Torment of Hailfire. and they will die. So this is one of the lists that actually wins with Torment of Hailfire, which is kind of cool. And the last core card I want to discuss is Arterial Flow. And what's cool about Arterial Flow, not only does it play into Florian's name, it also is a vampire synergy. So this was meant for this deck is what I'm telling you. Sorcery, each opponent discards 2 cards. If you control a vampire, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. No choice. No choice. Just discard 2 cards for me. Opponent. So it's asymmetrical. And I'm going to gain 2 life on top of laughing at the fact that I'm going to just dig 6 deep right now. It's good. It's really good. So I'm actually going to stop right here to check in with you guys. Obviously, that was a lot of talking at you, but such is the case. We wouldn't normally have this in a pre-recorded video, so this is the perfect opportunity for you to suggest some cards you'd like to maybe consider as core components to the deck. You'll notice there's no reanimate strategy baked into here. There's none of that you would typically see in a blacklist or Rakdos list. It's really all in on the dig and all in on Florian. And that's good, right? Because I would say it's linear by nature, but there is a gamble to it. Like, you don't know what you're seeing on top. Each turn is unique in and of itself. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this list that are very dissimilar to other Rakdosian commanders. But anyways. Blah, blah. Azra Adsmaker is so good with this commander, holy moly. Seto Kaiba, I had it in the list and it just didn't check out. I mean, I think you can use, it's funny, before this list was finalized for not only the gameplay session I had, but this video, I had Azra Oddsmaker in. And don't get me wrong, it's good. It's really good. But I don't know. I didn't make the cut. I can't say why. I find that Opposition Agent, even though that this is a proactive list, I still think Opposition Agent's better in most cases in that 3 CMC creature slot, because I want this body to steal that tutor to give me the thing I want. I'm all on plan A, right? And the draw is nice, but we're digging, I mean, we're giving ourselves essentially a very good draw every single turn. So it's draw isn't an entirely necessary component to this list because you dig so deep. I think one of the last games, I don't want to give it away. I'll talk about a different game. I had like 1 card in hand and I think I dug like 9 deep that turn and I found the other thing I needed, and the card I had in hand was like a red elemental blast. And I found like an Underworld Breach and I had a tutor from a previous turn, right? So like all the draw, sure, it can help you, but I'm also just giving myself components every single turn. The more you play Florian, the more you'll realize that this effect is just so darn good. It's fantastic, especially when you build for it, right? I know Florian's been used in other builds. I think Prosper is like the other most recent legendary in Rakdos that sort of has like an exile theme. So obviously Florian fits into there, but if you're building for Florian, it's just a different story. Playing that effect and building for it is so fun. All right, not willing to risk their own Florian either. Yeah, wait, this is live? I thought this was a video. Sure, part of the plan. Yeah, yeah, thanks. Well, I'm glad it feels like a video. I'm glad I'm able to encapsulate this perfectly. Torture. Torture, is that a card we should use? Damn, that art is grim as fuck. Oh, which one? Which one? The Arterial Flow with this dude just getting his neck ripped open? Yeah, it's pretty vicious. This makes Florian look better than I thought. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Have you considered the Bloodchief Ascension Mindcrank combo? No. No, because Bloodchief Ascension, you know, if you guys don't know this card, you need to set it up. There's a little bit of setup. It's not difficult to do, but it's not immediate. And for the most part, it's like a do nothing if you're not working towards this, right? But Bloodchief Ascension is 1 black enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life, which you should be doing just with Florian attacking in the deck, as we've clearly illustrated, is meant to do damage, right? You'll put a quest counter on this. So you need 3 or more, but whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if you have 3 or more quest counters, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, gain 2 life. So the other card in this combo, sorry, there's actually a lot of chat going on. Thank you for being here. Mindcrank, right? Yeah, okay. Whenever an opponent loses life, they put that many cards from the top of his or her library into their graveyard. This is fine. I think it's a little, there's a setup, 1, and then 2, Mindcrank by itself, I don't like, because I'm not on Leyline of the Void, or like we don't have Planar Void, or we're obviously not in white, so we don't have any of those typical effects like your Rest in Peace effects. Mind you, we do have Dothy Voidwalker, but that's one of 99 cards, and we're not in Jund, so we don't really have creature tutors to get Dothy Voidwalker. So giving your opponents a fresh graveyard is actually really bad, provided anyone else is on red, because the #1 catalyst right now in the world of cEDH is Underworld Breach, right? For any deck that's in red, you're generally on Underworld Breach. So giving them cards to play with is a difficult call. So Mindcrank, I would never really want to play that out early, because I know I'm giving them the opportunity off of the thing I'm trying to do to set up their own breach lines, which can be unhealthy. Or if they have like a excuse me, a reanimate strategy, not good. Or if you like bin their Sevine's Reclamation and you just sort of give them the game because they failed at like some pile, you know? I don't know. I don't generally like this unless you can do it and win on the spot. That's when I consider a combo good, right? All right. Anyways, hope that answers the question. Thanks, dude. This build is very rad. Dylan, I'm glad to hear it. Cameron, so what are the combo pieces? Oh, Cameron, we're getting there. That's after this short Q&A so far as like the core components are concerned. Again, if you have any questions about the core components, feel free to ask. But I'll try to make sure these all pertain to the core components. What's your usual Torment of Hailfire going to be cast at? Generally, if it's in our hand, we could just leave it at 1 or 2. It really depends on this list is, I would consider this list mid-range, but it can win on turn 3, right? It just does. Like, it's got all the fast men and all the rituals and all this stuff to like accomplish that task, even without casting Florian. It's Rakdos. It's just Rakdos good stuff, Underworld Breach, Grinding Station, not to jump ahead, but that's what it's normally doing. So if this is in our hand, you can sort of just leverage it for 1 or 2. It really depends. Like you don't want to do this and not have it go off because you were a little overzealous and you put 3 in there and you tapped out for this, and like there's one blue player who's like, no, I'm not sacrificing or discarding all those cards and we're gonna stop this. So don't get too crazy with this. Generally speaking, it's going to be between the 1 and 2 range for X, and then it is a payoff later, right? And then I'll explain how that functions. Is Vial Smasher too slow? Vial Smasher's fine. I think that, I mean, I'm assuming you guys know who Vial Smasher is. It's a partner commander, but it's in the same slot as Florian, and that's probably one of the main reasons I didn't use Vial Smasher, because you got to think about your play curve, right? Not to say that this is bad or not to say that this can't come out later, but this is kind of dead in my hand when I'm usually trying to transition into getting Florian on the field and I just have a Vial Smasher in my hand. It doesn't feel great. And then how vital is this effect, right? So it's really baked off of you casting spells. So the first spell you cast each turn, choose an opponent. This is on opposing turns as well, but it only matters on our turn, right, for Florian. So 1 out of 4 turns of value. Vial Smasher deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to that player or planeswalker. Now, we care specifically about damage to our opponents. So yes, you can drill a planeswalker, and yes, it's at random, and yes, you know, Vial Smasher might be down, and then we do Florian, and then we get our, I don't know, Deadly Rollick, and then we Deadly Rollick for free, hit that thing, and then we use its random ability to do 4 damage to a player. But at that point, you know, we're clearly done with our Rampage. Like, we're already a post-combat main, so it's tricky. I don't know how many spells we're trying to cast on combat or a pre-combat main phase 1 to where Vial Smasher is going to be really great, to be a part of the core pingers. Because in my mind, even if one of these pingers is just doing 1 damage to each opponent, that is a consistent dig of 3 every single time. You know, we've roadmapped that, and it plays well into our curve. That's our turn 1. Florian's our turn 2, in an ideal world, right? You'll save the Simian Spirit Guide to do Florian, whatever. You get where I'm going here, the Rite of Flame. Like, you'll save your ramp to do the thing with Florian. And then obviously, having these lesser bodies is important because, you know, Vial Smasher, while it takes a great deal of setup and is randomized, you'll feel really bad if you use Diabolic Intent on Vial Smasher, or you'll feel really bad if you use Culling the Weak or Infernal Plunge. Like, all of the, as additional cost, sacrifice a body, whereas something like one of these 1 CMC pingers, and that's sort of where I draw the line. Like, these are great, and we just want more of these. I don't really care if I get rid of Spear Spewer for Infernal Plunge at a certain point. Like, if it lets me go right into Underworld Breach and have interaction up for the Pyro in my hand, great, cool, done. Whereas that's Vial Smasher, I wouldn't say it's too slow, it's just not necessarily what we want. Okay. Been playing Florian a lot. His problem is the mana left after spending it to do damage. Just got here, maybe it was discussed. I don't know what that was in reference to. That's okay. Tyrant's Choice art, also really great. What about Gray, Merchant of Asphodel? So Gray is kind of a popular, I don't want to rope it into like, oh, only casuals play this card. But generally speaking, it's like a casual bomb. It really is, because board states get really overwhelming in a casual setting, and you have the devotion to make this very, very potent. But if you don't know, it's 5 CMC, so kind of heavy. This would be a reanimate target for sure. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. So in most scenarios, we do have a lot of black permanents, but I don't really see this doing more than 2 plus Florian 3 plus one of these pingers 4 plus, maybe we got Dathi Voidwalker down. Let's just give us the world. So 7, 14, 21 deep. That's pretty big. It's almost comically big. I'll state that again. If I do a dig of 6 to 10, it's a good day. Because a majority of this deck is really good stuff I want to see off the top of my deck. So digging 10 is huge. Like, that's more than 1/10 of our deck at the point we've already drawn. We have our opening hand. Like, the build total's 99, but it's less than that when we're playing. That's enough. I think that building for something like Gray is almost going out of your way. And that's at least what I found because I was looking at this initially. I looked at everything that does a lot of damage. I'm like, okay, oh, there's that one guy that's 5 CMC. When he ETBs, it's the Pirate. He'll do 1/3 of everyone's life. That's even bigger than Gray, and it doesn't require a board state. But I don't need that much. It's, again, a comically high amount. And I know it feels weird to say that, but it's not necessary to do that much damage. And the setup for that, it's so broadcast. They will stop you from doing this. They're like, I can't let them dig 40 cards. It's like, ah, shit. But you'd let me dig 10, wouldn't you? And 10 is enough in most all instances, trust me. But this is a better Gray in my mind for this deck. Same cost, same sort of strategy. You would want to reanimate this. But when it enters the battlefield, each player, includes you, doesn't matter, each player loses his 1/3 of his life rounded up. That's a lot. That's a lot of life. But I would almost want to do that. I would almost want to do that over. And yes, this is also an ad nauseum deck on the side. That's why I never considered Dire Fleet. But I would avoid these. Because again, do enough. Don't go overboard with the dig. You don't need to go that hard. Let's see here. I remember that you are fine with self-discard thanks to Underworld Breach. Would you consider Nahiri's Wrath to get players with your hand for a big dig? Nahiri's Wrath, would I consider it? Let's go ahead and look at that really quick. And then I will want to move on just to make sure that this video isn't like absurdly long. But this is part of the fun of doing this Deck Tech Live. As additional cost to cast this, discard X cards. Okay, so the main source of card quality in this deck is obviously Florian's top deck Exile. So we don't really have cards in hand necessarily, but we can get to a point where we do have a lot of cards in hand. Nahiri's Wrath deals damage equal to the total mana value of discarded cards to each of up to X target creatures and or players. So even if this was just, 3 sorcery speed and you discarded, I don't know why you would do this, but you discard your Ad Nauseam. That's 5 damage, right? Now my qualm with this is that this is as additional cost. So you're already telegraphing what you don't have anymore to handle the board, to put this on the stack, right? So let's just say, and again, you wouldn't do Ad Nauseam, you would do any of these things really. You do my Dark Confidant, I don't need it, and I'll also get rid of my Dockside. Again, Like I said earlier, the Dig a 10, like all these cards are really good. These are all really good. I don't really want to discard any of these. Kind of want to play them. But let's just say we did that. We're like, the Dark Confidant, Doxydix. Let's not do Doxydix. That's stupid. Simian Spirit Guide, Dark Confidant. Maybe that's a logical play. And you're going to do 5 damage to everyone, right? Well, they know you don't have like card quality anymore, and they know you don't have fast mana anymore. And if you're tapped out, then you're in a really bad state because someone could just counter this or deal with it, and you wouldn't really get any value out of this, right? What's each of up to X target creatures and/or planeswalkers? I didn't even hit players. So I'll state that there are just better removal spells. I thought this hit players. I wouldn't consider this at all, sadly. If you want this for removal, I'll just recommend you play at instant speed a Fiery Covenant instead. This is just a better card. All around better, you know. X is dictated by the life you lose for it, and it'll hit to all the creatures just the same. Again, you know, Planeswalkers, if that's a big enough threat, then you can consider some of the mainline Planeswalker removal. There's a lot in Rakdos, but I wouldn't really consider Nahiri's Wrath. All right. What about Cut Ribbons? And this will be the last one I field before we continue. And then if you're still with me at the end of this video, we can just have a Q&A to just discuss everything, rather. So this, again, isn't necessarily what I'd consider a core card, but it can function much the same way as your Torment of Hailfire late game. And what I like about Torment of Hailfire is the fact that it's good at any point in the game where this is questionable, right? The top effect Cut is very good for removing big threats, so you can get in and do a swing, right? Cut deals 4 damage to target creature at 2 mana at sorcery. Not exactly how you want this effect to read. You normally, if you have mana open, you want this to be at instant speed, but can't have the world here. And then Ribbons on the back end. So this is sort of it's like a staple in Anya Falconwrath builds. You don't generally see it outside of that, but Ribbons for X double black, sorcery speed, aftermath. Cast the spell only from your graveyard, then exile it. Each opponent loses X life. Yes, you can include this. I had Torment of Hailfire in over this because the aftermath here is less when I'm trying to win the game, which is sort of what this wants to do. Torment of Hailfire is going to be cast out of my graveyard anyways. It has aftermath because it has escape, right? It's going to be Underworld breached. So the aftermath is really negligible unless you want to incorporate this as an additional card for our core set to do damage to opponents. Like, you're not considering Cut Ribbons as the outlet per se. Like, I've got if you're looking at the list, I've got the Aetherflux Reservoir, I've got the Torment of Hellfire, I have a Praetor's Grasp, I could just steal a win con, right? You've got those solutions, so why not just put X equals 2 and call it a day, right? That's still 4 damage to dig 6 deep, 4 CMC to dig 6 deep. That's really not bad. So yeah, you can certainly consider this. I took it out because I felt like I had enough redundancy. Again, to just cover, we have 14 core cards here, but a 15th one that does this is really good. And I guess there's one honorary card, again, before we move on. There is one more pinger that I neglected to mention, and it's one you don't commonly see, but it's a unique one because it actually happens to be a swamp, right? So we can actually use a fetch land, drag this out of our deck, but Leech-Ridden Swamp, you fetch off turn, like my Verdant Catacombs grabs Leech-Ridden Swamp, I have a tapped land, who cares? But when it enters the battlefield tapped, okay, untapped on my turn, pay 1, black, tap it, each opponent loses 1 life, activate this ability only if you control 2 or more black permanents. Well, we have all those pingers, we have Florian, we're gonna have the black permanents, right? So just bear that in mind before you go for this, but it's another pinger. So technically we have 15 core cards already. So it's good. It's good by itself. I think that covers a majority of our questions. I see a bunch more, so if you can hold on to those for the end of this video, that'd be great, because I do want to start to discuss our win cons because we've been asked about it. So with our win cons and our play lines, I guess we should just start with what the play line should be. And I think for this discussion, let's just go back out to the main page here. But this is a huge part of the deck. This is our play line. With those 15 core cards, 16 if you include cut ribbons, which I think is a great idea. I had a sideboard here for this deck initially. Again, there were 50 plus cards. I just thought it was ridiculous to look at. I kind of wish I kept it because you could have seen all of the things I've already tested and considered. And a lot of which you've mentioned, well, to be honest, all of which you've mentioned, I had tested and considered. I'm so smart, is what I'm trying to say. But no, I tried to consider this before I shared it with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have considered this a deck tech or a better version of one. But maybe I'll just keep the ridiculous amount of sideboarded cards because you can just see what was in the deck. But this is a major part of the playline because, as you'll find if you watch the gameplay that's actually down below this this page, you'll see me functionally, manually set up wins with Florian. You just do it. You just manually set it up. Playline? What playline? I don't know. I just rips like 7 deep and I see a Demonic Tutor. Demonic Tutor in Underworld Breach. In Underworld Breach, I got all my mana open. Go, do the thing. Do the win the game. Or you top deck the Ad Nauseam. I say top deck. You like dug 6, you have Ad Nauseam. Yeah, I'll do Ad Nauseam. I'll do Ad Nauseam right now. Culling the Weak, that thing, the Spear Spewer, right? We don't need that anymore. Go off. Go ham, right? So this is one form of a play line, right? You're not always going to find those great catalysts. You're not always going to have Ad Nauseam, but a Tutor is a great catalyst in an Underworld Breach build because that Tutor is reusable. Right, so Florian is a huge part of the playline here. And I've mentioned it, it's no surprise. Like, if you're in black, this is one of the banes of many a player and one of the boons for the player using it. But people say you need a list that is dedicated or like has the curve meant for Ad Nauseam. But if you're under a 2 CMC average, your deck is meant for Ad Nauseam. Ad Nauseam is just good value anytime you play it. But this is another play line for the deck. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you dig, and I say you dig, but you can dig, Florian, find the Ad Nauseam, cast the Ad Nauseam, and you just drew 20 plus cards, it's weird because the game has changed. Like when I started playing cEDH, Ad Nauseam was very much an end of turn into your turn play. But nowadays, Ad Nauseam, you rip it like now. I want to do it my turn. Let's go to the next game. This was fun. And it's usually the same setup. All right, and I discussed this in my Rograk and Tevesh build, but it's raw, right? I just call it raw. To help you better play out Ad Nauseam, you'll play out any sort of removal you have to get rid of any threats that are lingering on the board before you go into your acceleration, right? The second part of raw. To start building up the mana base to play out your core cards and then win. You win on the spot. Raw. That acronym is supposed to help you with an Ad Nauseam. So removal, acceleration, win. Right? I don't know if that's exactly how I labeled it in that video, but there you go. Relabeling, restructure now. This is a definite play line. When you put a fourth of your deck in your hand, you should be able to have the game. Should. It doesn't always work out that way, but you should. Now, so what are the wins? So I'm not going to assume you all know what Underworld Breach does. I'm going to talk to you as if you're babies and you've never heard of Underworld Breach. And maybe you haven't. Maybe you haven't, but it's devastating. Like any red deck, it's as, what am I trying to say? It's as commonplace as like Dockside Extortionist is now. You're almost expected to roll with it. It's like the red equivalent of Thassa's Oracle. Like, what does your deck do? In blue, it's Thassa's Oracle. Even mono blue decks, it's like, it's Thassa's Oracle, isn't? In red, it's Underworld Breach, isn't it? You can kind of guess. You can kind of always guess, unless it's, does Godo even use? I'm sure that Godo cares about Underworld Breach. A lot of mono red commanders even care about Underworld. It doesn't matter. It's a good card. It's it killed Yawgmoth's Will. For one generic, one red enchantment, each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Stupendous. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. There's not going to be an end step where you don't resolve the game. There shouldn't be. There shouldn't be. This does require a little bit of mental arithmetic. Like you need to plan for having a flush graveyard to do the escape cost, coupled with the mana that all those spells require. But in a beautiful world of cEDH setting where you have an LED, well, you'll have the mana and you'll have a flush grave because you're discarding your hand to do the breach. If breach resolves, in many cases, the game should conclude. Though people do have forms of interaction for breach still, so don't count it in the bag. But Underworld Breach, The general line in a Rakdos setting, you can do this with another card called Stitcher's Supplier. I won't go over that because it's an unnecessary redundancy, unless you want to discuss it. But Grinding Station. Underworld Breach, Grinding Station. Okay. So 2 generic Grinding Station artifacts. When sacrifice an artifact, target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. That's you. You're going to target you. Whenever an artifact comes into play to include Grinding Station, please remember this. You may untap Grinding Station. Now, why is that so important? That it triggers itself. It entered, it saw itself, triggered itself. It's an artifact. Because you can use your mana crypt. Use your mana crypt to play out the Grinding Station. And then, when Grinding Station ETBs, you can break the mana crypt to mill 3 cards. Oh, what did I just say we care about? A flush graveyard for Underworld Breach? Well, that's 3 more cards for the Underworld Breach. Then Grinding Station untaps itself. Break your Mox Opal, break the Chrome Mox at this point, break the Mana Vault, it doesn't matter. If you've resolved the breach, you have that card. Mana Crypt, I have that card. I'll cast it for 0, untap Grinding Station. And then what you'll do at this point is start milling yourself, counting Storm. This isn't a Storm card, but it's a Storm card. So the main win is with Aetherflux Reservoir, and that's great. Mana Crypt taps for 2 generic. Well, casting Mana Crypt twice gives me Aetherflux Reservoir. And I'll just keep my Deflecting Swat in the graveyard. Like, the things you exile will be lands or non-interactions, right? You'll keep the REB, you'll keep the Pyro, and you'll keep it for indefinitely, provided you don't exile it, right? But Aetherflux Reservoir, again, it's important to count that Storm because you'll ultimately just start like, okay, this is my 8th cast, this is my 9th cast, this is my 10th cast. And all of that is going to equate to life. So whenever you cast a spell, you gain life for each spell you've cast this turn. And yes, you can do fun things like cast instants on top of it, or if you had the ability to use flash, you can cast multiple things over top of it, and that trigger will actually record all of the previous cast, and you'll gain life off of the most recent cast count, right? So you'll gain a lot of life, but that's just it's not necessary here, but that is a fun trick. Pay 50 life, Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. You're gonna hit a player. Hope that was understood. That's a win con. And then obviously in the same fashion, like if we LED'd our hand away, we say triple black, and then we just use, like, the same scenario, Grinding Station, Mana Crypt, you'll just build a lot of generic mana. And what was that card we talked about? Oh, Torment of Hellfire. How big do I normally go with Torment of Hellfire? I'll tell you, I don't know. I've got like, I got 70 mana now, and I've just got a flush graveyard and a Torment of Hellfire. I'll go 70. I'll go, how deep do I want it? I don't know. Let's do the math though, because there is a definite number you need, right? You need to destroy all the things, make them discard all the things, and then they'll lose 3 life per not activation, but per X. So 3, do it for me. Someone do it for me. I didn't prepare this part of the video. Oh God. So 3, let's just say it was 15. That's 45, right? That's pretty obvious. I probably didn't need to use a calculator for that. Well, if you did it for 15 and they didn't have enough things to break, then they just take 45. And at that point, mind you, you've been doing damage as Florian, as the Florian player. You've been taking every single turn to do a mess of damage across the board. I mean, to every single player. So they shouldn't have 45 life unless they have some crazy life gain strategy that I've never seen. They'll die without this being too high, is what I'm saying. So this is a really good way to just wipe the board. And again, you can do the same thing with cut ribbons, should you like. Those are particular, in this instance, win cons for the deck. And then the last one I want to discuss is very simple. If for some reason someone stops you on your breach play, and again, I would never advise you set up for it unless you had protection, right? And Florian gets you protection, like you just dig, you find the protection, sure. But the next card I want to discuss is Praetor's Grasp. I don't know, like I said, I've been talking about LED and I'll highlight LED in a second, but if you've milled yourself and for some reason you don't have the Aetherflux Reservoir anymore, you don't have the Torment of Hellfire anymore, you don't have a good line of play outside of that, just Praetor's Grasp someone's Thassa's Oracle. But you need to, you search their library, then you can, the player shuffles their library, and then you look at that card and you can play that card as long as it remains exiled. Sure, you still have to pay blue, Pat. You're in Rakdos. Are you a fool? I'm like, no, I've got Lion's Eye, Evan. At 3 mana of any one color, blue. I'll do that. I'll do that too. Cool. I'm in Grixis now. Do I win with Thassa's Oracle? Is that how that works? How does she read? I win the game? Okay, cool, I'll do that. Or, you know, Praetor's Grasp, in my opinion, is generally reserved for just taking an Underworld Breach. Because why use mine? Why put mine at risk if I can just use yours? Right? Basically every red list, it's never failed unless it's in their hand, right? I'm probably going to see an Underworld Breach in your deck. What does your deck do? It wins by storming with a flush grave, Underworld Breach. Okay. Praetor's Grasp. I'll take that. And then I'll play mine later. Great. Those are play lines and win cons for the list. Can you put in more? Sure. Sure. The thinner the combo is, as a general rule of thumb, all right, heart-to-heart halftime, getting real close here. The thinner the general combo is, the better. Because that means there's more room for your deck to hold ramp, additional interaction, additional removal. You can put more things in your deck, provided the win cons have overlap with value cards like Torment of Hailfire, and or take up a small amount of space in your list. Underworld Breach, pure value. Grinding Station, excellent. People always forget. People always forget it. And they'll top deck tutor. You're like, oh, okay, I can lose my Soul Ring now. I'll mill whatever you just Imperial Sealed. Cool. It's funny. Without fail, it's one of those things like, oh, oh no, I didn't realize that. You're like, yeah, I know. I know you didn't realize that. I did. Thanks. It's like, don't feel like you need to overpopulate the deck with win cons with Underworld Breach and Grinding Station, because you will be able to dig indefinitely until you find a win con. And if you're having trouble getting it, like, again, you want to start gaining life as soon as possible to use Flux Reservoir. If you've done Grinding Station, Mana Crypt 9 times and you still haven't, like, seen it, yes, then before that, just use the DT or use the Gamble or use the tutor that's in your graveyard to just find Ether Flux Reservoir. Just tutor for it, cast it, go, right? But again, the math, you need to do the mental arithmetic to just make sure that you have enough to do the thing, right? So, questions. Any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts on the win cons play lines? I hope I've illustrated them well enough. Okay. Aggro Belby, kind of, yeah. Gary is great, but cEDH has ad nauseum on 5. Yeah, that's the issue Truheimer is pointing out here, is that Gary is 5 and ad nauseum's better. You're just trying to dig really deep, right? And ad nauseum's sort of the most vicious way to do that. So I don't really want to hit a 5-drop Gary, where we have things like a Leech-Ridden Swamp, Spear Spewer that are just doing enough to dig enough, right? What about Tectonic Giant? Tectonic Giant, Sarah says. I'm assuming this is red? Oh yeah, I was looking at this. I didn't test this, but I was looking at it. It looks really cool. Attacks becomes a target of spell and opponent controls. So likely attacks, right? Tectonic deals 3 damage to each opponent. Dope. And again, this is just on the attack. So provided, it doesn't matter if it's blocked or whatever, you're going to do the 3 damage. So that's 9. Exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them. Until the end of turn, you may play that card. I think we're probably going to go for the damage 9 times out of 10, unless Florian is out of the equation, right? If Florian gets removed somehow, we'll definitely, yeah. we're probably going to want to consider Tectonic Giant for the bottom half, right? Maybe find some fast mana. This isn't so bad, though. I think its major... It's for CMC. I'm sorry. I have this on close up, so you guys can see it. But it's just for CMC. I think that's my major qualm, right? I almost wish that it was, and I know that this makes it lesser, because the instances where this can happen are fewer, but if it said enters the battlefield or attacks, I feel like I would have been more inclined to consider it. Because at least I know that if I cast Tectonic Giant, it's not a do-nothing on the same turn. Does that make sense? Whereas if I cast this brawly-looking Elemental Giant, it doesn't do anything until I attack with it. Or someone targets it with a spell. They won't. I don't think they'll target it with a spell if you're playing Florian. Or if they do, they're going to do it during your, post-combat main phase. And or off-turn, to where you're not really going to benefit from it, right? But until the end of your next turn, at least if that does occur, you could just hold on to it till the end of your next turn. But I'm iffy on this. You could certainly incorporate it. It's low enough in CMC that it's easy enough to shoot out there, and I wouldn't say that it's a reanimate target. particularly because it's lacking the ETB effect. Again, I feel like this would have been more recommendable if it said enters the battlefield and attacks, personally. All right. Enough of those core damage dig spells are below 3 converted mana value. With all that mana you're building with combo pieces, would Bloodthirsty Adversary give you more value? Bloodthirsty Adversary. Okay. We'll check it out. Okay, so this is a new card. For 1 generic, 1 red, haste, vampire, 2/2 body, when it enters the battlefield, it doesn't matter how it enters. This isn't a kicker. You can reanimate it and do this, right? You may pay 2 generic, 1 red any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many +1/+1 counters on Bloodthirsty Adversary, then exile up to that many target instant or sorcery cards with a mana value of 3 or less from your graveyard. Copy them. You may cast any number of copies without paying their mana cost. Now, while this does pay for the effects you're getting, this is rough. Like, it's good, and then it's not so good, right? It's a hasty girl, so she'll be able to swing for 2, so that's nice. At just surface value, that's there. But paying 5 for this does feel a little rough. So it could be a 3/3 hasty, so they'll just block. You might not get in the damage, and that's okay. But you can exile that many instances. This is definitely more of a mid-range play. If you find that the deck is not behaving the way you want it to and winning or accelerating to where you want it to, maybe this is advisable. My recommendation is probably just a mulligan to where you have more ideal starts, to where you're digging quicker, you're doing more faster, because you're trying to be proactive with the list, or at least this particular build. This feels a little sluggish, and maybe even more of a consideration for something that's stack-centric. Like, this is going to be a more mid-range approach because you'll have the mana requisite to do this. Or, you could use the Infernal Plunge to get rid of the Spear Spewer and then, activate Bloodthirsty Adversary, but I don't know if, this is the kind of value I want. I don't need to give my stuff flashback, you know what I mean? I don't need to do that mid-game. I don't think it's of super benefit for me. But you can certainly consider it if that's something of interest to you. That creatures and planeswalkers, isn't it? Yeah, it doesn't work. Oh, thank you. This was all in relation to something earlier. I just want to say, Trashtronics, love your content. Just found you a couple weeks ago, and please keep it great. Thank you, Trashtronics. I appreciate that. I highly suggest switching over to Architect for a deck builder. I am going to take that recommendation, stick it in my back pocket, and probably never use it, because I've used Architect, and I really disliked it. But if you do like Architect, you're more than welcome to continue using it. I did not like it. But thank you for that recommendation. Belby and Florian as partners would be insane. Yes, Paul, it would. Don't I wish. Hey man, just want to say, really like your shorts. Funny stuff. Both shorts. Both shorts? All two of my shorts? Thank you. There's more. Check them out. Don't watch the one regarding the mildly controversial one. I get too many comments on the worst cards from Innistrad Midnight, hon. How can you make these opinions? It's like, yeah, it's just an opinion piece, chill. But my lord, the amount of comments I receive about Lier. I don't care that you like Lier. I'm sorry. Lier helped me win one of these games. Thank you, Lier. Exactly what I talked about happening, happened. Funny how that worked. Funny how that worked. But my lord, I'm so annoyed with those comments. Anyway, I love those comments. Keep talking to me about shit that you disagree with. How many win cons is too many win cons in general? 2 is enough. 2 is generally enough. Yeah. Crazy, right? It's crazy to say that, but I said it. You generally don't need more than 2 win cons. Because you have a plan A and you have a plan B. If neither of those work, then you should just have points of recovery. In other colors that might mean different things. Like if this was Jund, that would mean like Eternal Witness, Noxious Revival. Let me get those things back. I want to do those things again. But more than that is probably too much. 2 win cons is enough, in my firm opinion. Never realized that they aren't really kicker. I need to reevaluate them again. Yeah, in regards to the adversaries, yeah, they're not kicker. Have you looked at Loyal Subordinate? This is the, yes, I did. This is the zombie that does damage if you control your commander, right? Yeah, at the beginning of your combat on your turn, if you control your commander, each opponent loses 3 life. I did consider this. It's a low enough CMC. I gotta say that you can make a case for this over Kroxa. You could say that you want to use this over Kroxa because it's more. I don't think people are gonna care enough about this to want to deal with it. It's menace 3/1, so you're gonna get in for 3, and if Florian's around, you're gonna do an additional 3, and if Florian's around, you're gonna do 3 to each opponent. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 with just Loyal Subordinate, and it's actually very easy to get out there because it's a mana crypt-able creature. So if my turn 1 is a mana crypt swamp Loyal Subordinate, oh, it did test well, don't get me wrong. And to be perfectly honest with you, I would even say that Loyal Subordinate is better than... Let's make that switch. Let's make that switch. I like that a lot. I did, and yes, to answer your question, I did test Loyal Subordinate. I like Loyal Subordinate a lot. So yeah, I'll add it back in. If this is like the one deck that it's going to be leveraged in, genuinely, and it works really, really well here. So I like it a lot. Just bear in mind that, you know, when you do your like board wipey things, that it is first on the chopping block at 1 defense, but otherwise, I wouldn't do the board wipey things if it was there. It's just really, really nice. Thank you for that suggestion, and I love it. Yes, let's use Loyal Subordinate in the better build. Let's see you build Simic Flash build for cEDH using Helana and Ghost of Ramirez de Pietro. That could be a thing for the cold brew. That could be a thing, maybe. What strategy when Underworld Breach hits the graveyard from grind? If we hit our own Underworld Breach with Grinding Station, I wouldn't recommend grinding yourself until you had secured the Underworld Breach, personally, right? I think the more likely scenario, Lynn, is if I happen to cast a little spell called Gamble, right? If I cast Gamble and then I bin my Underworld Breach, what's the next plan of action? Cross my fingers. That's what it is. No, it's going to have to be a Praetor's Grasp scenario. I've played some risky games where you just lose the thing. But you'll still be able to like go for your ad nauseum, and at that point, your game plan is definitely entirely different. Because Underworld Breach is such a core card to this deck that you will need someone else's Underworld Breach. This deck will not operate precisely the same. If you were to utilize a Yawgmoth's Will, you could still manually storm into solutions. But yeah, I realize again we were in big face mode. You did not see Loyal Subordinates. Loyal Subordinates. For those of you interested in what the card looks like, it's an older commander set. What is it? 2018, 2019. But it's older commander set card with Lieutenant, and Lieutenant is the thing that's doing the thing. It's just a keyword. It's just a keyword to say if you control your commander. So very, very cool. Love this. But yeah, you will want to say some prayers, I guess, before you cast Gamble there. You might have thought about this card, but Killing Wave is one of my favorite pet cards. Nasdro X says 28 lands, not enough, bro. It is enough. Mulligan, just Mulligan more, Mulligan better. 28 lands is kind of stock standard in a lot of scenarios. You need to look at what your curve is. How many lands can you operate this deck list on? And then you'll be okay. Generally speaking, a cEDH deck is going to have anywhere between 27 and 30 lands. And that's normal. But if you don't play cEDH commonly, then that might seem foreign to you. Mulligan is a very heavy part of the strategy in a commander setting, especially if you're trying to play competitively. 28 lands is enough. Now, you can also incorporate things like Shatterskull Smashing. That means I have 29 lands, right? Any of these modal double-faced land cards gives you an additional land. In some of those instances, they come into play tapped, but this is one where you bolt yourself if you've never seen Shatterskull Smashing. So you have 29 lands. So I'm actually above whatever, I guess you thought this was, but 29 is perfect, and we can test it again. I haven't lost with the list, so it's been good. I don't know. If you feel unconfident having fewer lands, then you can add more. But I will highly recommend that if the curve is under 2 CMC average, you know, if the deck builder you're looking at has an average count, just look at this. Like, I can operate a majority of this deck with 2 lands is what this is telling me. That 2 lands will do a majority of the things in this deck. So this is 1/3 of the deck. It's good. It's good. And there's a lot of fast mana. You also need to incorporate the fact that we're using all of the fast mana, right? All right, sorry. What was the thing? Killing Wave? We'll look at Killing Wave, and then I want to close this out by doing some starting hands. We kind of shifted gears here. I sort of did the Q&A first. But if any of you guys want to see Goldfishing, just starting hands, what I would recommend, we can do that, and then we'll just close this out. But Killing Wave. For each creature its controller sacrifices it unless he or she pays X life. My qualm with this is that it incorporates you, and X value is mana, and we need mana to cast spells with Florian. So Killing Wave is a tricky thing. Yes, I like it. Yes, it can dig deep, but because you're digging deep at the cost of mana, right? Again, like Torment of Hailfire, like I said, that number's low. This also incorporates you in the equation. So not only are you losing life for just say Florian, so it's kind of killing your own ad nauseum, you're also having to pay mana to do the thing, and provided you don't have any mana left over, even if you dig deep with Florian because of this effect, you'll maybe get a Mox Opal out of it, or you'll get your land drop for the turn, and that's not quite good enough in my book. All right. How's it going, everybody? Shane, it's awful. Why did you ask? Only Gitrog has 36 lands or so. Yeah, but he, you know, that's different. She cares about lands. I guess that's what you're trying to say, Trueheimer. But that's a different, obviously that's a different strategy, a different mindset for the deck. I keep imagining Jund with Belby and Florian. What yeah, I know. Mono green regular commander decks can run like low 30s for lands also. When I had Silvala, I think I ran 29 lands. So yeah. Darn, I missed the beginning. Ripkiss, you can backtrack and check it out. But while you're here, if you're curious as to how this plays, guys, I think the one thing I want to do is just look at some starting hands and give you my opinions on the starting hands. Is it a keepable hand? Let's find out. So, is this ad nauseum hand keepable? Oh, such a good question. Such a good question. Mox Opal in a build like this, and you might have seen that we don't have very many artifacts. I'll state that Mox Opal, generally speaking, is reserved to be cast off ad nauseum. It's just free mana, provided you make the Metalcraft cut, right? Is this hand good? No. Diabolic Intent doesn't have any bodies to do the thing with. At least we're not presenting here. City of Traders is fine. It's a really great ramp. This is one of the underutilized lands in a cEDH setting. I use this in every deck that's proactive, because if you care about doing things quickly, 2 colorless is fantastic. I don't care that it sacrifices itself. The good bit of news is we have a rainbow land and we have a fetch land, so provided we see someone cast a Blood Moon or whatever, we can use Prismatic Vista in response to just get a basic, right, of a color we need. And just by looking at this hand, it seems like black is going to be the one we need. I wouldn't keep this hand though. This isn't a keepable hand. So this is where me talking about mulligans is going to help you guys, I hope. But yeah, we were fine on lands there. Okay, would I keep this hand? Well, as we know, we have 2 lands. I've got a Jeweled Lotus, I've got a Lion's Eye Diamond, I got a Dalthi Voidwalker, I got an Imperial Seal. Now, this is one card you don't necessarily want to see in your hand right now, but this is still a good start, right? Namely because if you're looking at this, I have Lion's Eye Diamond and an Imperial Seal. I have Lion's Eye Diamond and an Underworld Breach. That's really what I'm telling you, right? But this is a fine keep. I do have to say, though, we don't have much by way of interaction. I will state that after that first Florian cast, though, and I won't play this one out, but just to give you an idea. After that first Florian cast, like the next turn, you're going to want to do this, but it really depends on if we top deck a land, and not this one. But you'll want to do that because that is going to be your form of interaction, right? You've got a little bit of stacks on the board. You are stopping or at least stunting opposing Underworld Breach strategies, and that this is going to equal whatever your opponents are putting into their graveyard. So Dalthi Voidwalker is going to be potentially another tutor, right? So this is actually a really decent starting hand. Again, we don't necessarily have the colors to power out Florian and Dothy on the next turn, and as we just saw, we wouldn't have top decked another relevant land for that. This is only going to provide us red, but that's fine. I still like this hand quite a bit. I don't like that it doesn't have much by way of interaction, but if you're really looking at it, this is creature removal, provided you can get there. This would have been 2, that's not enough. So no, necessarily not my favorite. And this is 1 dead card out of the lot, so even still, it's good. Like if this was me having to go down to 6, I'd say that this is a fine, slower start. But also bear in mind that a turn 1 flow on turn 2 means that I would have been able to swing and see these 3 cards. So it's really not bad. I would probably reserve the Imperial Seal for a little bit later, like after a flow play, but I would just use this as my land drop, whatever. All right, next hand. We have 2 lands again. We have a Mox Amber that it's active if we have Ragavan out. It's active if we have Florian out. Those might be our only 2 legendary creatures, I think. That's fine. This is okay. This isn't a great start. Yes, Feed the Storm is cute to have. It's not entirely necessary that we have it. But also Cabal Ritual is really fantastic with this list. Obviously, it's a ramp card that, by virtue of its threshold, it is very good when you have a flush graveyard, but we don't necessarily in this scenario. This is fine. I wouldn't keep this, though. Yes, the DT is very appealing. Okay. And I'll do like 2 more of these just to give us an idea. And then if you want to see me play out a hand, we can play out a hand. All right. This is fine. Again, we have 3 lands here. Honestly, 2 lands is sort of an ideal start in this deck because Florian is digging all the lands, right? So like if you missed a land drop or you need a land, just use Florian and Voldaren Scion to further underpin the fact that you're going to be okay. But Florian is going to be great for that, so just bear that in mind. I wouldn't mind starting with 2, personally. So almost like Ether Flux Reservoir earlier, we don't need this many lands, but we've got all the colors we need here. This start is actually looking okay. No, is this like an impressively quick start? Not necessarily, but the good bit of news is that, you know, not in the same sense that like other proactive lists are looking to do the thing much quicker. So they'll mulligan down to 5 and like, oh, do I have all my fast mana? I'm a Jessica's Will. I'm gonna, you know, Rog Rack, and I'm gonna do blah, all this stuff. I'm gonna pour all this shit from my hand onto the battlefield, and then hopefully I have a wheel, or hopefully someone else wheels because it's so damn rampant in cEDH. You don't, without going through all of the fetching here, I would go for a Badlands, but you can do the Rite of Flame into Arcane Signet and blam, you know, you've got really decent start. You have the mana relevant to do a turn 2 Florian, and then you have a Pyroblast when you need it, coupled with the fact that after that, you have a Reverberate that is 1, going to protect your combo, and 2, it will copy anything. So provided you see another opposing player's DT go off, copy it and then take your own, you know, take your own relevant combo piece or whatever, if you had the combo piece in hand, or you exile the combo piece with Florian, which I believe I do. Again, not to spoil the gameplay if you haven't watched it. I exiled Underworld Breach and I cast Underworld Breach, and that game goes very well. But, you know, if you exile it with Florian, then all you really need to do is copy this for a tutor for some relevant effect, or just save it as a double red counterspell, right? So that one's a decent hand too. I would keep that. Is this hand decent? It depends. Are we on the play? Are we off the play? What's funny is that I don't think I've won a single game with Florian using Ad Nauseam, despite the fact that it's like the biggest catalyst in cEDH. You kind of want to go for Ad Nauseam. So part of me feels like in a very crazy, absurd way that I could just Gemstone Caverns the Ad Nauseam and be fine. I know. You probably want to keep it, but so far as I'm concerned, I manually assembled most of my wins with Florian. You just do that. And Strong Armor Tactics just means I can manually assemble it that much better. But if you're gonna do this right proper, you would do Gemstone Caverns, exile Strong Armor Tactics. And what's nice is that Infernal Plunge will eat the Pulse Tracker to give you the 3 generic cure on Ad Nauseam, right? So I would keep this if this is off. This is a good hand, is what I'm trying to say. This is a good hand whether you are on the play or off the play. This is actually really nice. Regardless of the Gemstone Caverns having the luck counter, this is actually not a bad hand. If you guys don't know how this operates, you can do this as a special action at the beginning of the game. If you're not on the play, exile a card and then put a luck counter on this, it becomes a rainbow land. And by rainbow, I mean it can tap for all 5 colors. And for you, you would want Rakdos. But you get rid of strong arm tactics. You can make a case to say keep strong arm tactics because it's just good for discarding and making people discard as well. But you'll get rid of this. All right, I'm gonna tune in with you guys. Mox April, Mox Jennifer. What about copy and Adnaz? Tishman Hofstra. I have won so many games doing that. Yeah, you can do that. Oh my god, I love when you see when you're okay. So this player is the other proactive player, and they cast the Ad Nauseam. You pass. I'll copy your Ad Nauseam. It was okay with these two, so it's likely going to be okay if I do it to you. And if they just like shipped it and they don't have anything to stop you from grabbing your own Ad Nauseam, oh my, it's brutal. You're like, whatever you grab, I am going to screw up. But yeah, that's a thing you can do as well, right? It's a 2 CMC Ad Nauseam. It's absurd. All the copy effects, underutilized. Use more of them. Let me see here. So this may be a dumb risky, especially with Ad Nauseam, but Flame Rift is 12 damage to opponents for 2 mana. I'll take a look at Flame Rift really quick. I'm sure it's not dumb. Let me look. You know what's funny? Okay, so it's killing me because another heart-to-heart halftime, and then I'll ask you guys if you want to see me play a hand. I built this deck, and I was trying to find this card again because I remember seeing it in Modern Horizons 2. I would want to own this one in foil, but I could not remember the name. I could not find it. But yes, no, this is not risky. This is a very good card for the deck. I couldn't find it. Let's put it in the deck. Thank you. Thank you. It was killing me. I'm like, why can't I remember this card's name? Flame Rift is really good. Thank you for this recommendation. And I will give the credit to Muffins on a Hill. Thank you. Thank you. I'll put it on the side, and then obviously you guys can just slap it in. It has my full recommendation. But you need to buy the Nemesis foil. Let's ramp those prices up because I'm sitting on 50 of them, and I want to make bank. That's not true. I'm not sitting on any of these. But I totally would buy the Nemesis foil because those old border foils look so hot. Okay, so I'll pass the question off to you before we close this video. Do you want to hang tight with me for another second to just see how this deck plays? What I'll recommend at this point, because this is the close of this deck tech, you can just watch the gameplay down at the bottom here. I'll highly recommend you just check this video out. It's a good indicator of how this deck operates. Despite it being actually the first time I played this deck, it operated very, very well. Ignore the first game with Lynn, and it actually, shine very well. But otherwise, it's a good indicator of how this deck is meant to operate and what you can do with it, and how it differs from other Rakdosian commanders. But it was such a good time. The casually competitive crew, love having them out. They're some of the best players that do not take themselves seriously. It's just a very, very fun time. So if you haven't checked that out, it's a good way to see how Florian operates. But if you guys want to hang tight and watch Flo just through one test hand, we can take a second to do that with each other. But otherwise, that's it for the deck tech. I hope this helped you. If this is a better way to do these, let me know in the comments section after this video, or you can just let me know in the live chat. I'd love to gather your thoughts and opinions on this. As normally when we do these deck techs, I will build them with you, and we all have equal say in how the deck should function. This, I have a very definite strategy with how many lands should be in the deck, what type of removal we should have, what type of core cards there should be. And this way I can sort of guide you through my, theory, my game theory crafting for the list, the general strategy. I liked doing this, I'll say on a personal level. This was very fun. I love being able to field questions from you all and hopefully answer them to the best of my ability. But there's certainly, and thank you for Flame Rift. Thank you for some of these cards that were sidelined. Genuinely. This is very helpful because this channel is all about building a better commander. So I am like 70-30 liking this over pre-recorded because there's certainly stuff that gets missed. So thank you guys so much. What about red X spells that deal damage to each player and some creatures? Tishman Hofstra. The only one I would recommend, or at least the only one I'm playing, is the Rolling Earthquake. But you can use more. You can use more if you want. There's just Earthquake. I think it's just called Earthquake. You can certainly use Earthquake, right? There you go. Use that as well if you want. Better Florian, bettered by Pat and the community. Love that you added some of these. Want to see some hands? Yes. Have you considered fire? Yes, I have, Sarah. Okay, so one dream of mine that I've always had is to make Fiery Confluence a spell to be cast in cEDH. And this is one that was in the deck to the very, very last. Like, I really wanted to incorporate it, but it just didn't make the cut. And I really, really love this card. So, Fiery Confluence for 2 generic. I didn't read the rest of your comment, I'm sorry. 6 damage each opponent. Yeah, okay, we'll get to it. We'll do it now. 2 generic, double red sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Oh, hell yes. Fiery Confluence deals 1 damage to each creature. Fiery Confluence deals 2 damage to each opponent. Destroy target artifact. So, okay, let's just say that you've left your dorks open for blockers for me. I'll choose the first mode once, and then I'll choose the second mode twice. So remove your blockers. Florian, go in there. 3 damage, +2/+2. So that is, in just this one scenario, that's 4, 8, 12, 15, just because I cast this spell. My only qualm with this, and why I like this over your other suggestion earlier, and no offense to that previous suggestion, the Tectonic Giant, this is doing the thing with immediacy, and all the modes here, destroy target art, these are all good modes. Because Grafdigger's Cage stops us. We want to remove that. So let's kill the Grafdigger's Cage. You know, kill the Grafdigger's Cage and then do damage to everyone. It's so good. Again, I had this up until the last and I removed it because the deck started leaning on ad nauseum, at least in my playtesting. But because I find that I like to manually assemble the combo more with Florian, I really like Fiery Confluence. Like, this is the, again, almost like Loyal Subordinate. This is the one deck that could really thrive off of Fiery Confluence. So I wholeheartedly recommend it. I'll put it on the sideboard, something for you to put in the deck as well. I definitely think it's good. I definitely think it's good. It is just a good card baseline. It's upsetting that it doesn't, we'll use the Chandra. It's upsetting that it doesn't see play, but it will definitely want to see play here. Because, like you were saying, if you did 6, 12, 18, I dig 18. Again, is that fitting into the comically high region? No, you're seeing 18 cards. Who can say that they see 18 cards for one spell? Other than ad nauseum. You know what I mean? Like, it's very good. I agree with you. It sounds like the few of you that are here, the 50 plus people that are here, clearly care about the deck and want to see it played out. So let's try it out. Do I keep this hand? Why the heck not? And I do hope, like, I'm not trying to the individual that thought 28 lands was too few, I do hope this helps, just seeing the hands, seeing it played. I know, again, it does feel very foreign unless you play cEDH, but it's odd to see a list with this few lands, I guess. I feel like I averaged 32 lands before I realized that at a certain point you don't want to top deck more mana when what you really need are solutions that fit within your curve, right? So look at your curve. What is your average CMC? How much can my deck operate on mana-wise? And if you're generating like mana elsewise, then you can sort of cheat around the fact that you don't have, that you don't have as many lands as you would maybe put in a list that's lacking fast mana, right? But I do hope that helps. And for anyone who's kind of foreign to cEDH, again, like 27 to 30 lands is kind of par for the course for most decks. Now, do I want to keep this hand? Can you guys see the hand fully? I hope so. Here's what I'll do. I'll do this. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Get that out of the way. Okay. Full screen mode. Let's keep this. Let's just say I'm off the play. So we'll do this and we'll do the Burnt Offering. Now, why I'm doing the Burnt Offering over the Scheming Symmetry, in case you're wondering, or the Deadly Rollick in this instance, I would keep the Deadly, no matter what, and obviously Underworld Breach. But Scheming Symmetry reads to me as an effect that will get me my Deflecting Swat, right? Or it will get me a copy spell, it'll get me my REB. It really depends on what I'm digging with Florian, but what's good about this is the fact that Scheming Symmetry puts it at the top of my deck. So before you ever get the thing you tutor to the top of your deck, I'm gonna Scheming Symmetry main phase 1, go to combat, dig, doesn't matter how far I dig, the top card is gonna be exactly what I want, right? And in this scenario, the top card that I kind of want, Man, that's a really good question. I almost want to just set up the grinding station, but I don't have relevant fast mana to make that work. Really, it could be a mana crypt, but that's not really game winning. It really depends on what I dig. Obviously, an Ad Nauseam would sort of be best, depending on what we pull into. But we'll keep this. This is going to change pending the game state. But we'll do Jeweled Lotus. We'll break the Jeweled Lotus. I think this is supposed to be exiled. I'm sorry. Right. So we'll do that. We'll break our Jeweled Lotus. Blamp. And we'll go into Florian. This will tap for black, whatever. We'll make 3 red. Cool. All right, next turn. This is big enough. I think I can see everything. If you guys can see everything, that's perfect. We didn't do anything that would require me to shuffle my deck, and I don't think I actually pulled my first card per turn, so let's do that too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Lightning Greaves. Cool. There's no great way to incorporate Lightning Greaves into the starting play, so we're not going to concern ourselves with that. Do we want to incorporate Lightning Greaves now? It really depends, right? So, yes and no. Are we concerned that Florian's a big enough threat for someone to want to target at this moment? I don't really think so. Generally speaking, Florian is not the biggest threat. It's just value, right? It's almost like seeing a Tymna at the table. Like, people don't prioritize the Tymna unless they're very, very spiteful or very annoyed with it. Or it's like, again, at most it's just giving that person value. And you don't want to use your removal to just remove value. You want to use your removal to remove potential wins. But what people don't realize is that in most cases, like when you see an Oswald, remove that thing. If you see a Tymna, if you can, remove that thing. It's a little too much value, because that can pose as a win if they get too much value. But for the most part, people don't really bother with Florian, and which is kind of making me second guess the Lightning Greaves, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, but they have helped. They have helped. Especially if you can get these out prior and give him haste, then you're just doing things quicker. So before I play the land, I'm actually just going to go ahead and dig. We'll swing at someone for 3. We'll do 3. Look at the top. Wow. Okay. This is actually going to be our... because this is really great. Now, this is what I'm talking about, right? So if like we did the Underworld Breach and like blah, we go for the Pyroblast, we have protection and exile, right? But we're not going to do that here. The Prismatic Vista, oh, it gives us an additional land. Yeah, that's cool, I guess. But I know for a fact that I can put the Spear Spewer down and hold with the Deadly Relic. So I almost feel like that this is not a bad hand to just do this and then cast the Spear Spewer. And then I have another way to dig deeper, right? I like this just a little bit more. So we have to do this sort of a wonky way. If we forget the latter half of Florian, it does say that you just randomly put these at the bottom, if I'm not mistaken. It doesn't really, we're not too concerned with this. We're probably going to tutor and, you know, it's going to get shuffled back. That's at the top. But just to do this accurately, we'll put Spear Spear down, hold the mana, pretend we have interaction. We really do have a Deadly Relic, though, and we'll go from there. Okay. Boop. We'll start by casting the Mox Opal. And I think in this instance, we'll just go and dig again. Boop, boop. We'll do, this is going to be 6 damage total. I will hold the fork, and let's just see if we can hit a land, really. Unless we've got something better to do with our time. It's looking like the command tower is probably our best option. Even over the Urborg, like, I wouldn't ever recommend giving anyone any sort of advantage, and giving them swamps can be advantageous, particularly with how important Necropotence and Ad Nauseam are. At least in a cEDH setting, giving them the colors to be on color is not good. It's also like if they play their Gemstone Caverns later, you're just also saying it's a colored land. Or Urborg is a double-edged sword, and this is actually something you can sideboard out as well. What do you guys want to grab here? I think I remember Fiery Confluence from the Neheb deck. Oh, so good. I forgot land drop and draw. Land drop and draw. Did I? Well, also land for turn. So like they just tutored to the top. So personally speaking, I'm curious as to what you guys would want to pull. Obviously, these are only as good as I'm doing things on my turn. So personally speaking, I'm feeling like the best course of action here is to probably go, there's no way we can activate the Mox Opal in this instance. Yes, if you're looking at it, we can do Cabal Ritual for triple black. Is that really advantageous to us? No. Of all of these, I know for sure that this is going to go to the bottom. A Tibble Tricky is going to go to the bottom. The Praetor's Grasp is only good if we can get the Cabal Ritual to go off on the same turn. I will avoid the Urborg, and to be perfectly honest, again, I think that's probably the best move. Now, why is this an okay setup for us? If I need to play any amount of control, my fork can work to stop someone from actively winning. I do have the Deadly Relic still available. And one thing I kind of want to do is put the Lightning Greaves down now, just to give myself a little bit of protection moving forward. But it also works towards the Metalcraft here. So while yes, like if I'm predicting that this is turn 3, someone's going to try to ad nauseum, then yeah, this is that scenario where we can ad nauseum, right? That's not bad. But, and what's even better is when that ad nauseum goes off, someone counters the ad nauseum. Oh, before your counter, I'm going to ad nauseum, and then I'll just wait till my turn, you know, to crush all of you. That's a really dream-like scenario. It's not entirely uncommon, but I'm not going to play or pretend like that's happening now because I think that's just a little too advantageous for us. I will do one thing though. I will tap here and here and do the... Someone can remove the counter there, so we'll tap there and do the Lightning Greaves, right? Cool. And let's just say off turn that we need to use the Deadly Relic, whatever. But we will obviously do this as well. That's kind of tacitly understood. But moving on, we don't have a flush graveyard. Please bear that in mind. Right? So even if we do Underworld Breach right now, we're not in a healthy spot to make that work. Truth be told, we almost want the ad nauseum more than anything, but we don't have the mana for ad nauseum. Scheming Symmetry is really just going to be a way to set up a decent start of action. Right? So we'll go from here, take our turn. Wow. Okay. So that was probably one of the best top decks we could have got. And why that is, I'm glad we played Lightning Greaves. Remember what I was saying earlier with the Metalcraft? If you do the math, Grinding Station, Mox Opal, Lightning Greaves, that meets our Metalcraft requirement, right? That means that this can tap for 1 mana of any color. So we're able to ramp and use Mox Opal with the Grinding Station to mill ourselves and set up an Underworld Breach. Now, our pile will only go so deep, but remember that other trick I was talking about in the earlier half of this video where when I cast this, it will trigger itself, right? So at this point, and not this point per se, I would actually use Grinding Station if I had another artifact, let's see if we dig for one, to break that and then break the Mox Opal, right? So that was actually a really good top deck. I mean, we could sort of guarantee we get an artifact too. Oh man, how much do we feel like risking it at this moment? The Scheming Symmetry could be used in this instance to give ourselves a good form of ramp and an additional artifact guaranteed. But my concern moving forward here is to not have our defenses up, right? Because if I do this, then Underworld Breach can't be cast alongside a fork for protection, right? But doing the math, we have 1, 2, 3 mana available. So if I did this, I'm down to 3. If I wait, I have 4, right? So we just cross our fingers, see if we hit something of value, and then do Grinding Station, right? Unfortunately, we don't have the mana requisite to do Underworld Breach and Fork. Curious to know your thoughts, though. We are digging 3 deep, 6 deep, right? Because we're going to use this to swing at the person who is obviously open, and this is going to do 3 damage regardless so long as we tap. So, love to hear your thoughts. And equip the commander? Yes. Command tower. How does this go infinite? Vincent! I will tell you. I will tell you how this goes infinite. Just wait. Wait. All right, let's dig. That's obviously the right choice. So, we'll go 6. I want to state that the Scheming Symmetry was definitely an angle that we could and maybe probably should have played, but Scheming Symmetry could also get us our LED in this instance, which is really good. So let's just see what we top deck. Again, Scheming Symmetry was probably equally as good a play. Imp's Mischief, whatever. Just looking at this particular setup, the thing we would want to get rid of is the Rite of Flame. And why is that? It gives us more opportunities to interact. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a land drop per turn, right? So, in our hand. Oh, that scheming would have been so good. But just to close this out, put a neat little ribbon on it, let's pretend that we can get by just going for it. Obviously, if you feel like you are going to be inhibited or you're going to be stopped in this particular line of play, it would be advisable to just keep building your board state, right? Go for the talisman instead of what I'm about to do. But you could do like this, to do the grinding station, activate the Mox Opal. You have 3 mana available. Unfortunately, we don't have a good form of interaction within this setup to do anything major. And we do stunt ourselves if we cast the fork to protect our, I guess in this instance it would be grinding station. But fork is not a viable means of protection because we don't have the mana for it. Neither would Imp's Mischief in this particular scenario. But you could make a case for right now Talisman, Wishclaw, pass. But let's just say that we can get this to go off just so I can illustrate how the combo is supposed to function. Does that seem fair? Yeah, I mean, I kind of like Talisman here too. I mean, we can do Talisman, right? We do Talisman, and then we can do Mox Opal, grinding station. And again, in this fantasy world, we're just saying that this works, right? Just to make things a little bit quicker, I'll do this, and this, and shuffle it. They should go to the bottom of your library, but okay. So we're gonna do this. We'll do the Gemstone Caverns again in the snow-covered mountain. We've got this up. We'll do this and this for generic to cast the grinding station. Trigger on the stack. We're gonna use this to break this. Oh, I needed the mana. I definitely needed the mana from Rite of Flame. We done goofed. So we needed to make sure we had the Rite of Flame to make this go off. We'll do that instead. We'll do this instead, for sure. Grinding station. Okay, here's how this is gonna work. Rite of Flame, grinding station. Grinding station, and then he goes in. Comes in, ETB. Before you break this, tap this for red, and then you'll break the Lightning Greaves, right? Okay. And now this will give us a better indicator. Boop, boop, boop. And the hope, oh my god, and the hope is to hit an artifact that will let us ramp. I realize why I wanted the Rakdos Signet there though, so that we can get the Metalcraft here. But it's gonna untap, we're gonna break the Mox Opal. Oh my god, let's hope we get there. 2, 3, no we did not. We do have a Jeweled Lotus in here though. So the way that this is gonna function, oh wow, we got manas for days. We'll do that using the mana we have floating. I say red or black, one over the other. So what we need to do is cast the Mox Opal ultimately, but we'll do the Jeweled Lotus, and then we're gonna put these on the field. We'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It's ultimately going to be removed anyways. Cool. Cast this, untap this, break this. We'll mill 3 more, right? So 1, 2, 3. Cool. Can't play lands from our graveyard. But what we need to do is just do this for as long as we can until we find something that lets us go mana positive, right? So we'll cast this, untap this, get rid of this, this, this. Boom, boom, mill, 1, 2, 3. I tap this, it's not a tap, right? That'd be really cool if we can get that Dockside out. Dockside, in case you guys don't know, is a really great combo in tandem with the grinding station, because the amount of treasures we create will provide us that many untapped triggers, but it's also just providing us a lot of mana. So we can break those treasures, is what I'm saying, with the grinding station, and we can get more cards into our graveyard to fuel the Underworld Breach, right? So it's very important to remember that treasures are artifacts for this list, because we have a very finite amount of cards in our graveyard to play with, right? We do have 1 command tower open, so we can use the Vampiric Tutor to ensure we get the thing we need. These are all disposable cards. This is a potential win con, so I'll leave it off to the side, but these are all disposable cards at this point. Which is to say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cast available to us. That is to say 2 cast. Exile 3, right? So you can kind of see how this is going at this point. What we will continue to do is just cast the Mox Opal. We're gonna boop, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. And any of the expendable cards I'll just put over here. Cool, 1, 2, 3. And we'll keep doing this until we find something that goes mana positive. Or we can do a Vampiric Tutor, right? Boop, boop, boop. To find, this is gonna go back into our graveyard, to find something of more value. And in this instance, it would be the Mana Crypt, right? Or, you know what, honestly, Mox Amber. Mox Amber is really good here, because that'll give us our Dockside ultimately, right? So that goes on top, boop, 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 boop. see if we can do this the way I want to do this. Boop, cast this. We'll get rid of the Jeweled Lotus now. We'll get rid of the Mardu Shadow Spear, and we'll get rid of the Black Cleave Cliffs. We'll obviously bin this to do the Mox Amber, Talisman of Indulgence, Bloodstained Mire. And so from here, we can do Mox Amber. And then we'll generate the mana to do Dockside Extortionist. And then it's turn 4. We can only imagine that they have so many enchantments, so many artifacts, that we're going to generate at least 6 treasures, right? And then from there, our grinding station becomes a milling machine, and we mill the heck out of ourselves until we find the solutions we were looking for. And again, those solutions are Torment of Hailfire with a lot of mana. It's going to be Aetherflux Reservoir. We still have 67 cards to play with. We still have a Vampire Tutor. We still have a Vampire Tutor to find the Aetherflux Reservoir. But you get where this is going. Ultimately, there's a little bit of math involved, but that is a win. Okay, we did it. We kind of did it. I'll tune in with you guys before I close this one out. I'm happy with that. This seems to function like I want it to, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And Vincent, that's how it goes infinite. Hey, I know this is a little unrelated, but does anybody have some irregular suggestions for cEDH? Yeah, a little unrelated. I have none. Pulse Grid. Instant. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card. If an opponent has more cards in hand than you, return Pulse Grid to its owner's hand. What do you think of Instant Pulse? I'm not thinking of it, so I don't really have any thoughts on Instant Pulse. But we can look at it really quick. How about that? Is that what it's called? Pulse Grid? And this will be the last question I field. I have no thoughts on this blue card. Pulse of the Grid. It's fine for a blue list. But yeah, that's it. That is it for this Florian Voldaren Scion video. I hope this was helpful for you if you're wondering how you succeed with this list, what you're looking for, obviously the additions in the list. There are going to be more cards that benefit this deck, and those cards are ones that do mass damage. It's okay if they hit you, but for a majority of the time, you want asymmetrical effects. Damage you, damage you, damage you. Don't touch me. And for that to be 2 CMC and under, try to keep the land base as it is now. Try to up the amount of interactions you have, obviously. If there are more new cards that say, if you control your commander, you get to do this for free. So if there's another deflecting SWAT, hell yes, throw it in the list. Those are the kind of free interactions you want to incorporate. It's very doubtful they'll do that again. But if they want to sell those commander sets, probably something they'll do. Now, as I do with all my videos, I like to close this out by thanking our Patreon community, but I realize I don't think I have this audio set up for our Patreon outro. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna install it really quick. But to all you viewers, thank you guys so much. To our YouTube members, those of you that pay to subscribe to the channel, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wanna get that out of the way first and foremost. You guys tuning in every week is why this is so enjoyable for me, these live streams in particular. But let me go ahead and add my voice as we do the outro to this video. Are we there? Are we here? Yes. All right. Thank you guys again for coming out and showing up. I really appreciate your help in this deck tech, honestly. Again, I think those 2 ads really made this great, and I love the suggestion of Fiery Confluence. Please, if you can find a way to put it into your list, I would incorporate it because it's such a fun card. But as I do with every video, I like to thank one random patron, and patron's right there. It just went off screen. Hanson, thank you, Hanson, for your support over on the Patreon. You are amongst the best, but you already knew that. Patreon community is the best community. You guys help me so much, you have no idea, but your support here is the reason I have time available to focus, hard focus on these decks and hopefully tune them to be a better deck tech for you. And I tell my Patreon community this, I tell you guys this, I don't generally share a deck unless I feel confident in its abilities, and Florian is one I definitely feel confident in. I had so much fun sharing it with you guys. If you're interested in doing more of these deck techs live, let me know. But again, my name is Patrick Marlette, and happy brewing, babies.